In 2014, a peculiar and troubling scene unfolded in Trout River, a small town on the coast of Newfoundland, Canada. There, stranded on the beach, was a massive, balloon-like object, though it wasn't some playful, oversized beach ball. This was the head of a deceased blue whale, bloated and swelling with gas. A foul stench seeped through tiny cracks in the skin, spreading a sickly smell across the entire town, like a seafood market left to rot for years. The balloon was over 4 meters tall, and the odor only intensified as more gases accumulated inside. The situation was becoming unbearable, and even more terrifying was the possibility that this immense balloon could explode at any moment in what is known as a whale explosion. When a blue whale dies, its body would normally sink to the ocean floor, creating a whale fall. This rare event becomes a final gift to the ecosystem, nourishing crabs, fish, anaerobic bacteria, and countless other sea creatures. However, this particular whale, a 60-ton giant, did not descend to the ocean depths. Instead, it washed up onshore, transforming its potential as a whale fall into something altogether different, a ticking time bomb for the community. Town officials and even the federal government were at a loss. No one had ever dealt with something quite like this, yet everyone understood one thing: if this whale exploded, the entire town would suffer. And for Trout River, a small town that thrived on tourism, an event like this could be devastating. But what exactly causes a whale explosion, and why is it so dangerous? There are 3 main factors. First, when a whale dies, bacteria in its body continue to multiply, producing gases like methane and carbon dioxide. Second, whales have evolved to withstand the extreme pressures of deep-sea dives, with uniquely strong, pressurized skin and muscle tissues that remain effective even after death. Instead of containing oceanic pressure, this structure now contained a relentless buildup of gases. Combined with the whale's massive size, this bloat can transform the corpse into one of nature's most grotesque biological bombs. When it bursts, decayed innards, blood, bacteria, and noxious gases will launch across a shocking radius, turning the aftermath into an unimaginable sight and smell. At this moment, the whale balloon in Trout River seemed stable, but the townspeople were on edge. What would become of this giant ticking time bomb, and what was Trout River's fate? To understand the potential consequences, let's look at another infamous case of whale explosion. 50 years ago, the world witnessed the first publicly televised whale explosion in history. A massive sperm whale had washed up on a beach in Oregon, USA, and by the time people found it, it was already dead and reeking. The beach fell under the management of the Oregon Highway Division, which now faced the task of removing this huge, rotting carcass. The straightforward Oregon officials turned to the U.S. Navy for advice. And the Navy, in true military fashion, had a straightforward solution.
Listen, countless seabirds and crabs are already picking at this thing. You don't need battleships, trucks, or cranes to haul it off. That's way too much hassle. Here's an idea. Pack it with dynamite and blast it to bits. The tiny chunks will scatter across the beach, and seabirds and crabs will clear it up in no time.
To Oregon officials, it sounded like a great plan. They set to work. In the days leading up to the explosion, thousands of curious Oregonians flocked to the beach to see the colossal creature. The media caught wind of the unusual event, too, and decided to cover it live. Reporters set up cameras and microphones, primed to capture every moment of the explosive solution. Finally, on November 12, hundreds of pounds of dynamite were ready. Cameras zoomed in on the bloated whale, waiting just meters away. About 75 people stood by, as reporter Paul Lindman described the moment with a nervous excitement. Then came a thunderous boom, and a geyser of sand and blubber shot up in a spectacular display. A fat rain of putrid whale blubber pelted the crowd. Everyone scattered, gagging and shielding themselves from the greasy downpour. Paul Lindman, unfazed and ever the professional, managed to crack a joke mid-broadcast.
Well, it seems this fad has traveled to some truly unimaginable places. I suppose that makes me a fad reporter now.
But the story wasn't over. When the smoke cleared, they realized the explosion had barely touched the carcass. The dynamite hadn't vaporized the whale, it had simply scattered chunks across the beach and the surrounding area. Highway officials were left to discover that their beach still held a sizable, stinking whale. And things only got worse. Pieces of whale blubber had rocketed over 200 meters, damaging cars on a nearby highway. One unlucky retired officer had his brand new car demolished by a chunk of flying whale fat. Worse yet, the blast had scared away all the crabs and seabirds. The beach was left coated with blasted whale bits that no animal wanted, especially with half a ton of dynamite residue now clinging to them. For the following weeks, officials returned, forced to clean up every foul piece themselves while the U.S. Navy was long gone. As the live broadcast came to a close, Lin Man offered a word of advice.
In the future, more whales will certainly wash ashore. We hope those in charge will remember not only what to do, but also what absolutely should not be done.
Did officials eventually figure out a better way to handle whale carcasses? Let's find out. In 2013, off the coast of the Faroe Islands, Danish scientists handled a stranded, dead whale with utmost caution. Wearing full protective gear, they carefully transported the enormous creature to a controlled environment, ready to dissect it with a 40-meter-long blade. Each step was precise and meticulously planned, a textbook procedure designed to prevent a potentially catastrophic whale explosion. All went smoothly, proving a new standard in dealing with such situations. But nature, as always, can be unpredictable, as seen 16 years earlier in Taiwan. On January 24, 2004, the third day of Chinese New Year, a massive sperm whale washed ashore in Taiwan's Yunlin County. Local authorities quickly assembled a team, flatbed trucks, cranes, and 50 workers set out under the leadership of Professor Wang from National Cheng Kung University. Professor Wang initially estimated the whale to be about 20 tons, so he called in two 40-ton cranes for support. But the whale was far heavier than anticipated, efforts with both cranes barely lifted it. Finally, after 13 hours and an upgrade to a 120-ton crane, they managed to hoist it ashore. They discovered they were dealing with a behemoth weighing 55 tons. By then, word had spread across the area, drawing more than 600 people to the scene. Despite the cold winds, locals came out to see this giant, even attracting vendors who set up snack stalls nearby. It was clear that the crowd had no idea of the impending risk, but Professor Wang knew the danger. Once removed from the cool sea, the whale had become a ticking time bomb, its body filling rapidly with gas, threatening to blow at any moment. Professor Wang urgently arranged for a transport truck to move the whale, but once again, they ran into trouble. The flatbed truck they'd planned on was too small for the 17-meter-long whale. They scrambled to bring in a 100-ton super flatbed truck, which finally arrived late on January 25. By then, the whale had been out of the water for over 24 hours, and gas was building up fast. Time was of the essence. At 3 a.m. on the 26th, Professor Wang set out with the whale in tow. But another problem emerged. Cheng Kung University hadn't anticipated a creature this massive and announced they didn't have a suitable dissection facility. After hours of searching, Professor Wang managed to secure a spot at a wildlife reserve on the outskirts of the city. To get there, they'd have to drive through Tainan. By 6 a.m., the flatbed truck rolled through the bustling streets of Tainan's West Gate Road, passing the popular Xiaobei night market. Then, right in the heart of the city, disaster struck. The 55-ton whale, already under immense internal pressure, suddenly burst in a spectacular whale explosion. Within a third of a second, tons of rotting tissue, oil, and blood accelerated to over 70 kilometers per hour, flying through the air with the force of several atmospheres. The nauseating sludge showered advertising boards, snack stalls, and splattered across the entire road. Nearby shops, cars, and bystanders, no one was spared. Later, a witness, covered in the rancid mess, summed up the experience. "It smelled so bad, I almost died." Incredibly, years later, visitors to Taiwan still claim that the air around the site holds a faint, unique aroma. Locals often reveal the reason: the explosion released a whale's treasure, ambergris, a rare, musky substance valued for its fragrance. The bizarre whale explosion in Tainan drew scientists from around the world, puzzled at the rapidity of the event. It had been just over 20 hours since the whale left the water, much faster than expected for a buildup of explosive gases. Further investigation revealed an unexpected fact: this particular whale had exploded from its back, a less likely site for gas pressure buildup. The first hypothesis came from a team at the University of Liverpool, who studied footage of the whale's initial lifting. They suggested that damage to its spine and muscle tissue, caused by lifting the whale by its tail with undersized cranes, led to weaknesses in its back. Combined with transport pressure, this compromised area became the point of rupture. But the next year, researchers from California uncovered a second mystery: bruising around the whale's wounds. Such bruising usually occurs when blood is still circulating. Following this reasoning, they proposed that when the whale was hoisted onto the flatbed truck, it might still have been alive, giving the story a chilling, almost supernatural twist. Seeking a more grounded explanation, Californian scientists theorized that the whale had likely been struck by a large vessel at sea. The bruising and internal injuries matched the kind of trauma from a ship collision, which could have eventually caused the whale to strand and die. The Tainan Strait, after all, is a busy shipping route. With some forensic reconstruction, scientists pictured the tragic scene: a sleeping or feeding whale, drifting across the sea. For sperm whales, both feeding and sleeping rely more on echolocation than vision, and if one crosses directly into the path of a vessel, it may not detect the threat until too late. This unfortunate collision between human activity and wildlife brought about the Tainan whale explosion, an unintended disaster and a powerful reminder of how human actions impact even the mysteries of the deep. Let's go back to Trout River, where, after a month of the beached blue whale's body bloating under the sun, a team of scientists finally arrived to deal with the colossal remains. They were from the Royal Ontario Museum, and they had a plan: to turn the whale into a museum specimen, right where it lay. First, they siphoned tons of oil from the tail, then carefully vented the gas trapped in its head. Finally, with a tugboat, they towed the whale to a prepared site, bracing themselves against the overpowering stench as they dissected it. Piece by piece, they removed the rotting flesh and numbered each bone. They preserved the 180-pound heart for plastination, shipping it all the way to Europe, and buried the remaining bones under compost to allow natural processes to strip away the last of the oils and skin. 3 years later, in 2017, they exhumed the bones, painstakingly reassembled them, and breathed new life into the blue whale skeleton that now stands proudly in the Royal Ontario Museum. In Tainan, the famous sperm whale that exploded in the city streets was preserved through similar means. Today, its bones stand quietly in a museum, a silent testament to one of nature's most curious tragedies. If you ever visit one of these museums, you might hear scientists explaining why it's best to keep a safe distance from stranded whales on the coast. With enough internal pressure, these massive creatures can explode, launching decaying flesh with enough force to cause serious injuries. Now, whenever I catch the scent of fresh seafood, I'm reminded of this story. I imagine a blue whale, singing its haunting song, diving deep into the ocean, envisioning a graceful whale fall as it gently descends to its final resting place in the depths. And yet, I also think about the potent, unforgettable reality of a whale explosion. Across generations, human activity has brought many whale species, from humpbacks to fin whales, to the brink of extinction. Even sperm and blue whales, once among the ocean's most populous giants, now face a fragile existence, their lives imperiled by illegal poaching, so-called scientific hunts, and tragic collisions with ships. Some say these whales are the planet's ancient spirits, beings whose wisdom runs deeper than we can imagine. While humans reside on just a small fraction of Earth's surface, whales roam the vast, hidden oceans, the true heart and memory of our world. If we were to lose these majestic creatures, what wisdom might vanish with them? What does it mean to coexist on a planet where the survival of such ancient life depends on our choices? Saving the whales is more than an act of conservation, it's a question of who we wish to be as caretakers of a shared and living Earth.